All right, so we picked it up again on page 263. Handling exceptions and errors. This is another way that you can handle errors. Errors in programming languages are often referred to as exceptions. And I've said this before. If I've said it to you, sorry that I'm being repetitious, but if let's say that I remember the day when we adopted our first daughter. You know, we were the first time we were walking her. We were her foster parents first, so we were walking her down a street in Portage, Wisconsin. That was down a street, yeah, down a sidewalk in Portage, Wisconsin. And I remember this lady came up and said, "Wow, what a cute little baby." Okay, well, maybe you've heard stuff like that if you've got kids, or maybe you've heard like, "Oh, what an exceptional child," or if your child is very smart for his or her age, what an exceptional child. Exceptions in programming languages aren't good things. They're exceptions to the norm. They're errors. There's a lot more to it than that, but I just want you to understand that. Notice, writing code that anticipates and handles potential problems is referred to as bulletproofing. Why am I highlighting that? That is one of the questions I believe in the matching on your test. All right? The question was asked about, during the break, about returning those tests. Yes, I'm going to return them. I will need them back. All right, for some reason, it's not allowing me to input grades today. All right, but you can see them. Some of you are going to be disappointed because you didn't do as well as you normally do. All right, one person in this room got 100. So it was both ends of the spectrum. Now, exception handling, as it says, it allows a program to handle errors or exceptions as they occur in the program. The way that you do this, and it's going to look a little funky, a little different, is you take any code that could possibly fail in a program and you do this. I put in here try. All right, I'm just going to remove that for now. And then I say catch. And in here, I put my error handling code. So when you use try catch statements, what you put in the try is code that could potentially fail. It's saying try to do this. All right? And if it fails, then do this. So in the best case, it does this and there's not a problem. 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 And it totally skips that. It's kind of like an if-else. All right, sort of. The worst case, it does this and there's an error. So when it does this and there's an error, it skips these and it jumps right down into here. Does the concept make sense? You're going to do a lot more work with exception handling in Java. And I think we'll look at it in C# also. All right, by that time, it'll probably make a lot more sense than it does here. So they show you an example in the book on how this can be used on the next page here, on 264, right here. And if you look at that, you might go, why did they say throw here? Couldn't we have just done an alert? And the answer is yes. It's another way to handle errors. What happens is the system sees this line that says throw. And it says, oh, there's an error. So it starts looking in your code for something in your code that's got catch in it. So it can catch that error. That might be written in the same routine you're in, or it might be written in the routine that called that routine, or the one that called that. Remember we talked about call stack? It's going to go up the call stack looking for a catch routine. If it throws an error and it goes all the way up to main and it doesn't find a catch, the program blows up. It aborts. So when you write a try statement, you are responsible for writing a catch someplace. Typically, it's going to be in the same routine where your try is, but it doesn't have to be. So they've got a bigger example of this on the middle of 265. And again, the way that this is done is different in different types of programming languages. So it does this. It comes through here and it's looking for a last name. If for some reason it doesn't find anything in the last name field, now can you see how this is coming together? We're using what? Get element by ID here. So someplace there was probably a text box that was called lname, all right? And we're assigning that to last name and we're checking the value of that, and if there's nothing in it, we throw one of these exceptions that says, please enter your last name. Then we come down here and we catch the exception where we throw some kind of an error message and we return false. I'm not saying does that make sense. If you have not read the chapter, it probably doesn't make much sense. Now, sometimes you try doing this stuff in here. If this all works, this is what I want you to get out of this. If I try everything in these curly braces and it works, I skip this whole catch statement. Does that make sense? Let's assume that I did this line right here and I did this line. And there is nothing in it. So I throw this error. Let's pretend there were about 5 or 6 more statements under here. I would skip all those because control then would go right from here to right there. Does that make sense? But sometimes you're working on a program where I've opened up a database and I'm trying to read a whole bunch of information and write it out or change it or whatever. And maybe it'll fail, maybe it'll succeed, maybe it'll fail. But whether it succeeds or whether it fails, I want to make sure when I'm done, I close the database. Does that make sense? When you put a finally clause, it has to come at the bottom. The finally runs, so let's assume that everything in lines 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 work. Everybody cool with that? So everything in lines 2 to 7 works. So then I skip 8, 9, 10, and 11, but I still do 12, 13, and 14. So the finally runs regardless of whether the try succeeds or the try fails. All right? You go through a whole big exercise where you do this on page 266, 267, 268, 269. So you will go through an exercise with this. And again, you're going to get this in other classes. So if it doesn't totally make sense right now, try to get what you can out of it, and you're going to be seeing it again. But again, I probably have mentioned this to you before, approximately 70 to 80% of all code that is written is defensive code. It's error checking code. So if you're filling out a form on the internet and you leave some field that was deemed to be required, if you leave it blank, the code that you might put in to do that is error checking code. If it asks you your salary and you either leave it blank or you put none of your frigging business, it's not going to accept that because it wants a number. That's error handling code. And I've likened before error handling code to car insurance. No one ever wants to use their car insurance, but if you need it, you might need it bad. And it's the same kind of thing for error checking code. All right. So on page 270, the author starts talking in here about custom error handling. And they say the primary reason that you use that exception handling that we just went over is to provide a graceful way to handle errors that may occur in your program. All right? But there's even other ways. So we have now looked at commenting code in or out, alerts, console.log, and try catch. So the author mentions here, starting on the bottom of page 270, there's other things you can do. You've actually done some stuff similar to this All right? But what this is saying is, if somehow there is an error in here, call this routine that's called process errors. You've been using process input because we've assumed so far that everything works. That's not how life works. All right? That's not how code is typically written. So you can come in there, you go, well, what is this? Process errors. Well, then you have to look on 271 because they've written their own process error routine here. Okay? So what does the system do if something breaks? Whatever you want it to do. It depends on how egregious the error is. If Ethan is filling out a form online and he forgets to put in his address, all right, that's not enough to kick him out of whatever he's working on. Probably he'll just get a message that comes up on the screen, maybe an alert or something similar, or maybe just some red text next to that field that says, this is a required field. But if whatever he puts in there, if it asks for a login or a password, I mean, if you try logging in, you know, maybe on your machine you've got a login, maybe you don't, but even for your rank and email, typically what happens is if you try more than 3 or 4 times, you'll get locked out. All right, why? That's error handling code. All right, so that's what they're talking about here. So you can make it do whatever it is you want it or need it to do. All right, jumping up to 273, I guess 272. The author talks about checking HTML elements and goes back and says, hey, you know what you might want to do? You might want to go back again and make sure that you run the validator for your HTML because maybe the problem is in your HTML someplace. And if you look right here up on the screen where I've got the mouse going back and forth, there's no ending script tag. There's no greater than sign that's right there. All right? What is that going to do? You can run the program 10 times and it might do 3 or 4 different things. All right? Analyzing logic that's on 273. Hopefully you all realize this. If you look up on the screen right here, there's no curly brace after the if display alert equal true. All right? So let's say that this is true. It's going to do this, and then it's going to do this. But if this is false, it's going to skip that, but it's still going to do this. Remember, if you don't put the curly braces in there, it only does the next line. So this is going to run condition true regardless of whether it's true or false. That's going back and analyzing your own code. That's one reason I told you you should always make sure to put curly braces in, regardless of how many numbers, you know, how much code you have after that. Yes.
So you said it was the next line. So does it have to apply to what's in the parentheses for the if for it to do the next line, or does it just skip it?
If what's in the parentheses is true, it'll always do what's in the next line, regardless of what it is.
Okay. So then how would it skip the window alert if it's not true?
If we had done this, let's say if we'd have put a curly here and a curly here, then it'll only do that window dot alert if this is true. It'll do the two of them together. But the way it is right now, it's as though we wrote it like this, with a curly here and a curly here.
So it'll only.
So if this is true, it'll do this, but it will always do this, whether the thing above is line 3 is true or false. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Right? And that's analyzing the logic of your own code. And again, I'm going to show you a couple things in just a few minutes. We're almost done with the chapter that can help in addition to this. They mentioned starting on 274 using the console command line. I already showed you that, where you can key in stuff right from the console itself. That's on 274 and 275. And then finally, starting on the bottom of 275, there is yet another way you can do this. That's called the debugger statement. It says JavaScript includes a statement debugger that can make debugging easier in some situations. All right. It says when you add a statement with debugger in it and run it in a browser with the debugging tools open, the browser stops executing the program and it switches the focus to your debug tools. Okay. If you say, I don't understand what that means, try it. All right. Another thing on your test, what is strict mode? On the top of page 276. We have 2 more pages left in the chapter, and we're done. In strict mode, some features are removed from the language while others are made more stringent. What the heck does that mean? Again, if you would, please look up on the screen. I'm asking you this question. The answer is no. Is that going to have any effect on the program? Because I took the word var out. The answer is no. But if I do this at the top of my program, now what's going to happen, and I don't remember if it's got a semicolon, I guess it does. Now what's going to happen is it's going to flag that and give me a warning telling me I didn't use a var statement. So the idea by saying use strict, it's trying to make you abide by the rules you're supposed to be abiding by anyway. But since JavaScript is so funky that it lets you get away without doing them. All right. There's another thing that's in here, and again, I'd like you, if you would, please, to go over into your browser window. It's very, very short. Just type in jslint.com. jslint.com and hit enter. If you do that, it looks like this. It worked. This, it's not the same, but this is like when we ran the validator on our CSS, or we ran the validator on our HTML. So I'm going to come back here to the code that we put in before. I've got use strict. I've got here try and catch. I'll leave all that stuff in there. I'm going to grab everything that I've got. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. I'm going to go in here into JSLint, and I'm going to paste it in. Now I'm going to click JSLint. And it's going to flag, and it's going to tell me anything that it thought was not correct. You go, wow, it doesn't like anything that's in there. It's unbelievably picky. In other words, it doesn't like, for the try, it wants the curly here. It doesn't want the curly here. All right? So take this with a grain of salt, but what you can do is when you look through this, you can start looking at your errors, all right, to find out what's wrong. It's got warnings. Now the good news is, notice that it's got warnings. It doesn't have anything that says errors, which means the program should still run. But it's got a lot of warnings. And it shows me a report here. Those are my functions. All right. So if I go back up to the top here, and I go back to JSLint, where we were to begin with. In fact, I think it's jslint.com/ I think it's help.html. You don't have to go there. That shows you how you use this. All right. So it's just jslint.com/ help.html. So linting is what they typically refer to it. I think that may be on your test. I don't remember. It involves running your code through a program that flags common errors or issues that may affect your code. They may be errors, they may be warnings. And that's it. All right. Now I want to say one more thing. And that is this. If you look up on the screen here, we're going to go over the test review right now. But if you're having issues on anything, a real good place to start looking is in these key terms, if you haven't been doing that. Because I'll tell you what's in here from your test. Breakpoint, bug, bulletproofing, call stack, exception, linting, I think was, logic error. From the next page, runtime error, strict mode, syntax error. So you can get a lot of that information from here. Any question?
Yeah, about the JSLint.
Yeah.
Would it work better if you did the beautification on brackets?
No, it's you can, but it's still going to throw it in. It's still going to throw it in there. It'll basically put it in there. We can try it. Okay. So for instance, I mean that's a good question. junk, but it's on the desktop. So let's see if let's try it. I don't want to get an update now. Yeah. File, open, desktop. Forgot what I called it. I think it was junk. Junk.js. So there it is. Well, it's pretty big, but you get the idea. All right, edit, beautify. Okay, now it's beautified. A copy. Let's throw it back into JSLint and see if that does help. It might. I don't know. All right, lint it. It probably cuts some of them down. All right. I know it likes it better when it looks like this. All right. All right. So let's take a couple minutes. If you would please bring up on your screen your review. All right, this should be it. So hopefully you brought it up. Here's question 1. What is the call stack? It's kind of big, but this was what was shown in the book. So this might take till close to 10 to get through this because, like I said, I've used the definitions that are in the book. I wouldn't expect you to spit this thing out exactly like it is, when you get those 2 or 3 short answer questions, or you've got some, a lot of you, and I ended up giving credit for it, but if you remember, I can't say it because you haven't taken the test yet, but watch the wordage of the author, all right? Because sometimes the author they use their exact words when they give you questions, and sometimes they don't. That might not be fair, but that's just the way they do it. And my guess is if you had an author here and you asked them, why'd you do it this way? And you say, well, I wouldn't have done it like that. They'd probably tell you in a nice way, when you write your book, then that's the way you should do it. And you all did a good job of this yesterday. Tiffany, just so you know, if you didn't hear this before, when you take the test, I do require that you have your thing shut. So. If you're not asked this, it's not a short answer question, but basically, it's a history of the different function calls in your program. That's what it is. All right, everybody have that one? Okay. Number 2. This is how I started today. What are the 3 types of programming errors and which does each mean? Remember their syntax, which is a violation of the rules of the language. This is what the book said happens when the interpreter fails to recognize code. Runtime, this is from the book. When it encounters the program, an error when the program is running. And logic, error in the program design that prevents it from running as anticipated. I think it's 5 weeks from Monday is your last day. Okay? And the reason I'm telling you that is the next day, that Tuesday, I'm going to be in St. Louis and I'm going to be meeting with Evan. And I believe that if she doesn't do it, I'm going to do it. You're going to be asked to do a course evaluation. And I might ask you to redo the same one I had you do before. But I'm interested in hearing what people think of these 2 books. I think they were actually both good books. I'm not saying they're great, but they're both very good, I think. But Evan is interested too because we have to figure out, he has to put in January his orders for the next school year. So if you can write comments on I like the book, I hated the book, because if 9 of you write down I think both books stunk and I wish we'd use anything else, I'll let them know that. When does the second semester start? It's around, I was going to say the 8th, the 10th, somewhere in there, yeah. And you do get a week off in the spring semester. There is a spring break. And I think you're done right around the end of the first week in May. This summer, I'm probably going to be teaching a camp here to either junior high or high school kids for a week. And I'm teaching myself, it's an offshoot of making Android apps. It's called Android App Inventor. And I'm going to show these kids how to build about 5 or 6 apps. The reason I'm telling you that is it may be in here, it may be downstairs, but there may be 24 kids. Any of you are interested in helping chaperone, for lack of better words, and I'll ask again. I'm already doing one camp, I guess, in St. Louis, July 10th through the 14th, I believe. We're going to teach you kids how to write web pages in a week. Now, Drew asked me a question before about typing tutors, and one of the things I mentioned to him was that if you go out Mavis Beacon free, all right? There's a free typing tutor. And these have been known as some of the best tutors. Mavis Beacon, I don't think that's her. That might be like a great-granddaughter or something. But it says teaches typing in less than 2 weeks. If you're not a very good typist, you might want to take a look at that. And again, it's free. There are other ones, but I've used that one when I taught keyboarding before. All right, number 3, why is the console helpful in debugging? 2 reasons. It displays the line number and an error description. All right, number 4, how do you log errors to the console? How do you log errors to the screen? The console is the console.log, and to the screen, it's the window.alert, or just alert. You could say window.alert, but you do need to say console. So this would be okay, and so would this if you look up on the screen here. You could just say the alert statement. That would be fine too. Number 5, what is a breakpoint? It's something you add to the program that causes program execution to literally stop when it reaches that statement. Bless you. Okay. What is exception handling? As it says, it allows programs to handle errors as they occur during program execution. What's the syntax for an exception handler? It's try, as it says, statements that may fail, catch, statements to handle the exception, and finally. This is not mandatory. You don't have to put in a finally if you don't want to.
Should the of and the finally, should that be or?
The what?
And finally, should it be or instead of of?
Yeah, those are comments anyway, but you're right, you're right.
Right.
And it shouldn't be orf either, it should be or. There. What are debugging tools used for? To track down logic errors. The system finds the syntax errors for you. All right. You find the runtime errors when you execute the program. So what's left, that's what the debugging tools are used for. Your logic errors. What does the use strict statement do? That's what we just finished with. It requests that processors remove some features and require more stringent syntax. There's more to it than what I showed you as far as just using the var or not using it. But the other stuff that it handles, those are advanced topics that we don't get into in this class. So I just did not go over those with you. 10. What is logging? Writing values directly to the console. So logging is when you use the console.log statement. What is break mode? It's when you temporarily suspend program execution so that you can take a look at the values of variables and the like. Again, I took these right from the end of the chapter where I showed you before. So that's how I grabbed, because they were in a really convenient place. That way you don't have to hunt all over the chapter for them. What is debugging? The process of tracing and resolving program errors. It's finding the bug and fixing the bug. And then the last one are all those definitions, so I'll leave that up here. Again, I can't fit the whole thing in there, as you can see, but syntax errors you already have. Most of this you've already gone over. When we're done with this, I literally need to talk for 5 minutes, and then the rest of the period is yours. I don't want to give you a break and then talk for 5 minutes. To me, that's kind of silly to do. So. Does everyone have the first one, syntax errors? Everybody have that one? So I can move it down a little bit. I'm assuming that everybody's got these two done. The error messages and the window.alert, so I can move this down just a little bit more. Does everybody have through breakpoint right here? Everybody got all that done? 'Cause that's it. I know you're just finishing this up. Does anybody afterwards, let me know if you need me to go up or down on this. I just want to mention what I copied over to your, or what I emailed you this morning, and then that'll be it. Hopefully you can finish this up if you're still typing in a couple minutes. All right, I'm hoping everybody's got it done. I just wanted to show you this. If you look up on the screen here, this will be very fast. First, I'd like you to go out to this website right here. This is all you have to type in, too. You don't even need the HTTP, to my knowledge. EloquentJavascript.net. Right there. It is a free online book on JavaScript. So why don't we use that book? It's much more technical than the book that we have. Some of the stuff that's in there, but it's free. So if you ever want to look at it for another resource, I kind of like the chapter that they had in there on debugging, which was chapter 8. So it's a hyperlink. Just click on it, you know, and you can get there if you're interested. Again, if you're not, you're not. All right. I showed you using the Chrome developer tools. I showed you the thing on Code School if you're interested in that. And I would suggest, if you want to just get started, so if you just started looking at this stuff and you're like, I'm just totally confused as to what we're doing, period. I found this video. It's not the greatest video in the world. You've got this link. This isn't the stuff I sent you. But it's a YouTube video. It's 6 minutes long. So even if you hate it, it's 6 minutes out of your life. And it's called How to Use the Console in Google Chrome Tutorial for Beginners. And I just thought it did a pretty good job of starting to walk you through it. So what I just so you know, what I actually emailed all of you today, I want to show you this. I don't have to do that. This is what I emailed you, all right? It's a folder, and it's got a bunch of stuff that I put in it into Word documents. I'm not going to open up any of those. I would tell you, if you want to start this one that's called JavaScript Debugging for Beginners, that's a good place to start. The only one I will show you is this one. It's got the debugging URLs. Oops, not there. Come on. Yeah, I know. It has that eloquent JavaScript I just showed you, the Code School thing I just showed you, the DevTools overview that I showed you, a couple of other things on debugging. All right. So again, if you're interested, cool, and if you're not going to look at it anyway. Does anybody need any of this stuff shown, move up or down or whatever? All right, because that's what I had. So you only take a break, and then the rest of the period is yours.